There's been a global rise in anti-Semitism since the war between Israel and Hamas started in October. FBI Director Christopher Wray warned in October that anti-Semitism in the United States is reaching historic levels. The London Police Service in the United Kingdom reported a 14-fold increase of incidents since October 7th. And here in Canada, major cities are also reporting a spike. Deborah Lyons is Canada's Special Envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. Deborah Lipstadt is the U.S. Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. I want to thank you both for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Deborah Lyons, I know you've been on a listening tour in the week since you replaced Erwin Kotler in its post. I would imagine you're hearing quite a few stories. What are you hearing?
I think we're hearing that people are very anxious. They're fearful. They're obviously in a lot of pain, a great sense of loss and concern about what happened, of course, on October 7th. But that has been, I would say, further compelled by what has been happening across Canada with the anti-Semitism incidents that we've been seeing, with the hate speech that we've been hearing, with some of the demonstrations on the street that have become, I think, almost violent in a sense. This is not, I think, the Canada that the Jewish community has been used to, and I think all Canadians are very concerned about what we're seeing, and what we need is an all-out engagement by our leadership to get us back on track and continue to build that Canada that is meant to be diverse and inclusive and respectful.
So Deborah Lipstadt, that warning from Christopher Wray that anti-Semitism is reaching historic levels.
Yes.
I mean, that's quite a statement.
That's
when
quite
you
a
look at the history.
From the chair of the head of the FBI. They don't talk in hyperbolic terms, and you know. So when I heard it, I was taken aback. What we're seeing, as my colleague Ambassador Lyons points out, is I've talked about a surge in the past. I've talked about a spike in anti-Semitism. What I prefer to say now is a tsunami of anti-Semitism, and we're seeing it worldwide. We're seeing it across the globe. And I think the thing to understand is anti-Semitism is a threat to Jews. That alone would make it worthy of a government saying we have to stop that. Certainly in any democratic society, in a multicultural society like Canada and a country like my own, and others as well. But anti-Semitism is two other things as well, which makes it different from other prejudices. First of all, it's a threat to democracy, because anybody who buys into the conspiracy myth, which is the heart of anti-Semitism, has bought into the notion that Jews control the banks, Jews control the media, Jews control society. In other words, they've given up on democracy. So that's one, it's a threat to democracy. But something else that we've seen, particularly, we saw it before October 7th, but we certainly have seen it since October 7th, anti-Semitism as a threat to national security and national stability. There are bad actors in the world, countries, groups, organizations, individuals who recognized anti-Semitism as a pressure point in a society, particularly in a democratic society.
So it gives them unrest to foment
if
an opportunity.
If I can stir up the pot, if I can foment,
create instability.
Exactly, then it works to my interest. And we've seen that with anti-Semitism.
So, Deborah Lyons, we can understand why bad actors, foreign actors, would want to do that in Western democracies, Russia, Iran, whoever, because they want to undermine this way. But why do you think we're seeing what we're seeing in the streets? Why is this fueled by the events post-October 7th, by the Israeli military response and what is happening there? Is that what's driving it, or is it something more pernicious? I mean, what do you think has caused the spike since then?
Well, I think given how prevalent it has become right across the country, we have to accept that there was an underlying anti-Semitism there that I think hadn't raised its ugly head in Canada. And that certainly the events of October 7th, the concern first and foremost for our Jewish community and for the people of Israel who went through that horrific day, that quickly got overtaken by, I think, a misunderstanding to some extent of the politics, the history of the Middle East, and of the fact that Israel needed to defend itself and defend its citizens. And I think that what we're seeing now is a concern, of course, and a concern that many Israelis would share, and a concern that Canadians would share, of course, for Palestinians in the situation right now as the war continues with Hamas. Hamas, but that should not be something that then negates our concern for our Jewish citizens.
No, of course
One
not.
can be, very concerned about making sure that Canada remains a strong democratic society that reinforces all of its citizens. One can be pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian at the same time. And I think what has happened is we've lost our ability to kind of have those conversations, to respect one another's views, and to actually, I think, learn from one another. And instead, we've ended up with this anger and this hatred on the streets that we have got to now really address and work through our leaders, mayors and university presidents and others, to bring the temperature down.
So Deborah Lipstadt, how do we do that? Because, it's happening in the United States, university campuses, it's happening here, and the binary of the debate, the polls are so profound, and people can only feel their own pain and anger and not see the other side of it, right? So how do you bridge this?
I think it calls for a whole-of-society approach. It can't be one group speaking out. It can't be just a special envoy speaking out. But it calls for a whole of society to say, this is wrong. Look, you can feel however you might feel about the Palestinian issue, and criticism of Israeli policies is not anti-Semitism. In Israel, if you've been to Israel, the national sport is criticizing the government.
But it seems to me there's a more nuanced debate about the actions of the Israeli government happening in Israel than there is in Canada and the United States.
Absolutely. Because it's a democracy. It's a vibrant democracy.
So are we, allegedly, but it's become difficult.
But what we see in the United States and what we see, my remit is really abroad, as I'm part of the State Department, but we see in Canada, we see it in Europe, et cetera, tearing down posters of kidnapped children is not taking a stance on this war. It's anti-Semitism. Harassing or defacing a kosher restaurant is not taking a stance on this war. Exactly. Trying to bomb a synagogue is not taking a stance on this war. And I think what it calls is for, irrespective of one's position on the political situation, on this geographic tender spot and now war, is to say this is wrong. This goes beyond anything political. This goes beyond taking a stance one way or the other. And I think it calls for leaders of all communities to speak out about this. And if you don't, then I have to wonder, when you speak out on other issues, I'll give you an example. I'm going to be in Israel next week, and one of the things that has been of great concern for me is the gender-based violence that we saw on October 7th. Israeli women, Jews, and possibly even some Druze and some Arab women, but I'm not sure of that, but certainly numerous Israeli women and girls sexually assaulted in a terrible way. And we have women's groups who have rightfully spoken about Iranian women, Yazidi women being harmed and being subjected to sexually based violence, but being silenced here. Right. So you got to ask, why speak out then and be silenced here? Why is this different? And the answer can be quite disturbing.
Is it the intensity of the conversation? I don't know. Like, I see some people who will have these conversations in private, but like, I'm not going to raise my head because I don't want to get in the middle of this. Do you know what I mean? I'm not justifying, but this is an explanation I've been offered. Deborah Lyons?
Well, I think we've been talking about this today. I think this is one of the things that we need to do much more work on, because I think people are feeling uncomfortable about raising their heads and speaking out on this. I think people are feeling somehow that they're going to be thrust into one side or another, which is why I think we have to get back to what we are both saying, and that is we have to have the discussions. People have to be able to express their opinions, but without feeling that they are going to be challenged or dismissed or whatever for taking a position. I think we've got a paralysis of leadership, David, which is really concerning me, because I think leaders are feeling uncomfortable. I think one other point that Deborah and I want to point to as well is that the big difference right now is also the impact of social media and how that is playing out. And we're part of an international group of special envoys who just met yesterday online to say that we really need to take this on. So we're going to be coming together as a working group and meeting with the majors, meeting with Google, meeting with Meta, meeting with X and others, to see how they now are going to take some responsibility for the channels that they have that, frankly, have fomented a lot of the hatred.
I think, just to add one point on that, you know, in my country, we have this pesky thing we call the First Amendment.
You do have that,
yes. I just heard about a legal suit here, one of your police officers was telling me, where someone was arguing, but I have my First Amendment rights. And they said, not here in Canada, but we have it in the United States.
We do respect free speech.
Yes, that I know. That I know.
Yeah.
But I think what's important with the social media platforms is what at the very least, and this is certainly in the United States and the State Department, live up to your own standards. You have said that you will not tolerate anti-Semitism. You will not tolerate hate speech. You will not tolerate speech that provokes others to act in violence. Live up to your standards. Let's begin with that. If we begin with that.
If you get the social media giants under control, you come back, because we'll want to know the secret to that. But
see you soon.
Yeah, I know we got to let you go, but Deborah Lyons, just one last question. Is it getting worse? Like since has it built
since October 7th?
Since October 7th, like there were a series of incidents early, but we've seen stuff at schools where kids are there, Jewish-owned businesses. Like, look, the consulate, the embassy, I get it, political targets, but like the businesses, the kids, the shooting at school buildings, fire bombings at buildings. Is it getting worse, or has it reached a level?
I think that it has gotten very bad since October 7th. I would say in the last week or two, we seem to be reaching a level, but I'm worried that it's just a plateau for the next moment to come. I think clearly we're getting much more organized, and leaders, government leaders at all levels, and faith leaders, as Deborah said, it's a whole of society. I think people are getting now a little bit more organized and ready to take it on. So maybe that is bringing the temperature down a bit, but not enough. We have a long way to go. It's going to take a while, David, for us to come out of this and repair the damage.